Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome back to a new video. It's taken me about half a week in this new The Old Piece update that we got for me to find a absolutely busted build. I will show it today. Of course, our main perpetrator of this build being completely broken is Saryn, and Saryn is very well known for being broken in general with things like the Sobek, but this build tops them all because really the game just plays itself. So let me get into it. Saryn is able to spawn spores. These spores will spread across enemies, and when you damage those enemies, the spores will spread to more enemies within a certain range. As you can see right here, the range for the spores to be initial cast is 168 meters, which is very far, but we mainly care about this spread radius. At the moment, I have 280% range, and the spread radius is 44.8 meters. If I get into the build, it will give some more context. What you can see here is we are building basically just for range. We don't really want too much else. I am using Thief's Wit unironically because this build kills so much and so far away that you sort of just have to look on the minimap where the loot is and chase the loot instead of chasing the enemies, because the enemies are dealt with automatically. I'm using Molt Augmented for some ability strength and Arcane Circumvent, and then I'm using Calm and Frenzy to spread Rest and Rage vulnerability, as well as increase the speed of enemies so they walk into our range of death even faster. Then I'm using Rolling Guard because it nicely combines with Arcane Circumvent. And if you don't know what Arcane Circumvent does, if you roll into enemies, it will steal 50% of their defenses, which includes Overguard, armor, as well as shields. And these shields will stack on top of your own shields to create overshields. That's pretty much the whole Saryn build, and the reason why we want this vulnerability I will get into in a little bit. Then for the weapons, it doesn't really matter what you use. The main combination for the damage and where it gets insane is this new Focus School weapon for the Madurai Focus School. This weapon is called the Thara, as you can see right here. It's the Madurai Focus School weapon. And what it does is the following. If we go into our focus, you can see that within Madurai, we get this whole new part of the focus skill tree added on top. You unlock this after you purchase the Tauron, the Thara weapon at Marie in the cathedral that's been added to Sanctum Anatomica. And once you have this unlocked, you can level up all of these additional perks, and I will just get into what they do. So Thara summons a bow, and this bow will fire into the air, blanketing an area with a rain of explosive arrows for 7 seconds. This is very nice. It can be combined with the perk called Overwhelming Power, where every enemy that's hit within this initial range will grant us 5% additional ability strength, and this will stack up to 50% for 30 seconds. This means that with Madurai, if you combine this with the Sling Strength passive, you will now be able to get up to 90% extra ability strength, which is already very powerful. But where it gets really crazy for this Tauron Strike ability is the Rain of Arrows perk. On dealing damage, fire an arrow at an enemy with a 0.35 second cooldown between arrows. And on dealing damage means any type of damage. So this can be literally anything in the entire game. There's some exceptions like enemy damage and stuff like that, but in general, if you are dealing damage either with abilities or weapons, you will be summoning more of these explosive arrows to rain down on enemies. You can then increase the radius of these arrows, so the blast radius of these arrows, to 5 meters with the Surging Storm perk, and you can increase the amount of additional enemies that will be targeted by these arrows within 10 meters using Downpour. Where this gets really broken is with Saryn having spores. Spores deal damage the entire time every second. So if an enemy has a spore on them and they are being dealt damage every second, this will also spawn a new Rain of Arrows projectile above them, and if they have multiple enemies within a vicinity of each other within these 10 meters, it will spawn even more arrows, and these arrows will trigger spores to spread. So it will basically be an infinite loop of damage going around and around and around in an insane radius, because Rain of Arrows, it lasts for 30 seconds after casting your Tauron Strike, which it doesn't say here, but it does last for 30 seconds, and I can show this in a mission in a little bit. But during these 30 seconds, there's no limit on the range in which rain of arrows will work. So basically, if you are on one side of the map and there are spores on an enemy completely at the other side of the map, without having line of sight to them, nothing, it will just spawn arrows on them and barrage them with gunfire. So Saryn was already very powerful and powerful enough to kill enemies with spores if they spread long enough, basically playing the game itself. But now with these arrows on top, it gets just even more ridiculous, and we can even use this on just your steel path survival missions for fissures and stuff like that. So that's pretty much that. I can also show you the new mod screen that we've got, and specifically the arcane I'm using. The mods for all of the amp stuff doesn't really matter. The only mod that sort of works for this combo is this Ampazu Shoal mod, which gives us 12% Tauron Strike initial charge, as well as a 2% bonus for each mod from a unique school. So at the moment here we have Madurai, which you can see in the top of the mod. This is Madurai, this is Neramon, and this is Zenuric. So in total we have an extra 6%, which we can see here as well. We can see the initial charge tooltip, which is 18%, but this is because this is now not calculated. And this is exactly the 6% we're missing that we are getting from this mod. Then for the arcane, I'm using this Zit an Sekil. This will grant us invisibility for 30 seconds after activating our Tauron Strike, which is exactly the same duration as the Rain of Arrows. So if you run out of invisibility, you know that you want to cast another Tauron Strike if you have it. Plus this also gives 9% extra Tauron Strike charge rate. The reason why I had a bunch of lenses on all of my weapons as well as frame is exactly for this reason. It boosts the Tauron Strike charge rate by 10%. It doesn't really matter what kind of lens you have on. Let me just get a random weapon where I do not have a lens. If I go to the lenses, you can see right here, it gives us 10% bonus Tauron Strike charge rate. And this is for all of the different qualities. The greater ones are the same. Even the Lua ones just give you 10% Tauron Strike charge rate. So yeah, basically everything in your loadout you want to have a lens on. The lenses that are being incorporated into giving you this Tauron Strike charge rate is on your Warframe, on your primary, on your secondary, on your melee, and strangely enough on your arc gun. The lens that you can put on any other stuff, like in this menu, doesn't count. On your companions you cannot put lenses, and on the operator amp you can also put a lens, as you can see right here, but this actually doesn't increase it at all. So there's a lens on here at the moment, but this is actually not functioning. Now in total we can get up to a 42.7% faster Tauron Strike charge rate, and we have a bunch of initial charge from this mod, so we are charging our Tauron Strikes relatively quickly. And because Tauron Strikes are purely based on enemy kills, this build is able to easily get over 200 kills per minute, which means that your Tauron Strike is charging very, very rapidly. All of the operator arcanes and stuff doesn't really matter. All you really want is that one arcane and this bow and all of the perks that go with it. So you definitely do want all of this unlocked for it to fully function. So for the companion, I can also go over that. You don't really need any specific companion, just anything where you can put Resourceful Retriever, or at least any of the retriever mods that increase your credits and resource pickups is what I would use, because there's just a ton of loot that you can pick up. I also want to go over the Archon Shards. At the moment I'm using 2 Emerald Archon Shards for extra corrosive stacks, so we full strip enemies. You don't need these 2 Tau Forged, you can just use normal green shards. Then I'm using 2 for additional ability strength. This is mainly to get the vulnerability from Rest and Rage higher, because this is pretty much the only way you can increase the damage of your bow. The bow damage is only increased by vulnerabilities from abilities like Rest and Rage, or for instance from sources of vulnerability like Viral. Then finally I'm also using this Tau Forged Violet Archon Shard to give me the ability to also pick up health orbs for energy, so I'm constantly on max energy. So yeah, let me get into a mission and I can show you exactly how it works, and I can also show you some nifty little tricks that you can use to make this a lot better. One of the things that we've also been finding is that having a higher power strength is nice for higher levels, but on lower levels it can limit you because the enemies are instantly killed by the arrows, so they will not spread any of the spores. So you sort of lose out on the infinite loop, but I do recommend having at least some power strength if you want to take this to higher levels, like into the thousands. Will probably work into the low thousands. But yeah, what we do is we just spawn a couple of spores on enemies, we rest and rage them. We can use this Saryn Sobek combo to sort of get the build going, and then if we see a focus orb, like right there, we see it on the map, you will get this once you install a lens on at least one weapon. For me at the moment it's blue. Usually this spawns as yellow. You will get some focus points and you will get a small duration in which you can acquire focus. But for me, it will show up as plus 10% daily focus cap or plus 10% charge rate daily focus cap is reached, but I can still use this to increase my Tauron strike faster. Now what we really want to do is we want to keep an eye out for this icon right here. This is the Tauron boost that we have at the moment. And if you are within this duration and pick up a new focus orb, it will instantly charge your Tauron strike. So what we really want to do right now is just sort of run around and survive, make sure we stay alive, make sure we spread some spores, cast some mold, cast some rest and rage. And now I see a new focus orb spawn, here it is, and we have the Tauron strike. So and this is where it starts. We cast the bow, and then you will see that this bow will deal damage, a ton of damage, but it deals this damage all the way over there. So if you look at the map, you can sort of just see enemies dying all over the place, and you can also see that the enemies die too quickly, so I have to recast spores for it to do the damage spreading again. So yeah, at the moment this is a little bit overkill, so you could also, for these kind of levels, if this is just where you're farming, here's a new orb, and you can see it instantly charge my bow. But if you're on lower levels, you can consider dropping your power strength by a little bit to make it make the loop of damage work a little bit better. But in general, just moving around the map, casting a spore every here and there, and dealing some damage will usually enable the whole chain to start again. So I just cast some spores here, and there it goes. And then this is pretty much the whole gameplay loop. We just run around, we pick up all of the loot, and we watch our minimap for when a focus thing spawns, so we get the bow back again. And then we fire it, and we keep going. And here in the top right, I will also show you what it looks like for the buffs. This is the Tauron strike buff, so this is the Rain of Arrows buff, which will now last for 27.6 seconds. And here is the invisibility that we get after executing a Tauron strike from the arcane that we had on the operator build. And that's pretty much all we do. We cast some spores and we run around. Now, what's actually nice about this build is that it will also work on Thrax units. So this damage that we are dealing, this purple damage that's from the bow, will also kill the ghost form of Thrax units, so you don't really have to do anything. And another nice bonus is that this damage that we are dealing with the bow, it completely bypasses damage attenuation on enemies that have a dedicated health bar. So this is enemies like acolytes, but also just bosses in general. We can use these new abilities to circumvent their attenuation and deal massive amounts of damage to them. And then I see that there's another orb that spawned, and now I do not have overlapping buffs. So you will see that most likely this focus orb will not charge my Tauron strike, as you saw right there. So now we just have to play the game normally for a little bit again, charge it up, but with a Saryn and the Sobek, this is easy work. So what I like to do is watch until my invisibility runs out, because that's a nice sort of meter for when I have to recast the bow. So when I'm not invisible anymore is when I will cast the next one, or when there's a new focus orb, I quickly cast it. I can actually also show you how overpowered this is on acolytes by just casting it right now. There's Misery, and Misery is gone. I don't even know where they were. Probably right on me, but that's fine. This is also a downside. Getting the pop-up for the relic part means that the timer will usually dissipate, so you cannot pick up a new focus orb in time. Okay, I will make sure not to kill the Thrax units, just so you can see that the bow actually works to kill their spectral forms. So now we can cast it on these dudes right here, and hopefully they are still in range. You can see one there in front of me, and it got 10 million damage and instantly died. So yeah, this build is also quite nice in Void Cascade. What we did find is that if you are playing with multiple people, the focus orbs tend to spawn a lot less and actually not overlap. So it's a lot harder to pull this off. So this is mostly a thing that you can do in solo. It's just more reliable that way. It seems that these new focus orbs are generally quite buggy, so it might be fixed in the future, but we'll see. As for this whole combo, I'm expecting this to get patched out relatively soon, but we'll see what happens. D is going on a winter break, so maybe we'll have this build in the game for a couple of weeks. Let's see what kind of KPM we have. As you also saw, we were overkilling by quite a bit. This was about 6.5 minutes, so we're getting around 200 KPM. For this mission specifically, you can consider dropping down your strength by a little bit if you are not planning to stay in the mission for very long. You can just do this by unequipping your mod augmented, for instance, for another kind of arcane, or dropping off the strength shards. But yeah, that's pretty much it. This is the build. If you did want the Sobek, this is the Sobek build. With that being said though, I hope you enjoyed this video. You find it helpful in some kind of way. Make sure to share this build with your fellow Tenno so they can make the most out of the time that this is still around. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next one.